Episode 9 may have just sealed Becca's fate, and if fans are right, what happens next could be even more horrifying than Dr. Grove's death itself, because after Becca killed her abusive father in one of the darkest moments the Testament has ever delivered, the show quietly dropped clues suggesting Gilead may already have chosen her punishment: a forced marriage, becoming a handmaid, Aunt Lydia secretly intervening, or maybe something even worse. But before we even talk about Becca's fate, there's one massive mystery fans cannot stop arguing about. Who actually took Becca at the end of episode 9? Because depending on the answer, her future may already be decided. Before we break down the theories, let's quickly recap what actually happened. Episode 9 finally exposed a horrifying truth about Dr. Grove, revealing he had been sexually assaulting Agnes and other girls for years. After reaching her breaking point, Becca stabbed him to death in his bathtub in a moment that felt less like revenge and more like survival. It was shocking, tragic, and honestly heartbreaking, because Becca didn't act out of cruelty. She acted because the adults around her failed to protect anyone. But in Gilead, context rarely matters. A woman stepping out of line is still a woman stepping out of line. And by the end of the episode, Becca was dragged away by hooded figures, leaving fans terrified about what comes next. But here's the biggest mystery from episode 9. Who actually took Becca? At first glance, the answer feels obvious. The eyes. Commander Mackenzie explicitly calls them, and moments later, dark-clothed figures arrive to take Becca away, while Garth escorts them inside. Everyone around Becca reacts like official Gilead authorities have arrived. On paper, the case seems pretty closed. And honestly, this is still the most likely explanation. As much as viewers want a surprise rescue twist, episode 9 gives us way more evidence that Becca was taken into official Gilead custody. There's also another clue making the hopeful theories harder to believe. The finale description reportedly says Becca will face the consequences of her actions. And if she's facing consequences, that strongly suggests she's still trapped inside Gilead's system, not secretly escaping somewhere safe. But here's why fans refuse to let this theory go. A surprising number of viewers noticed something strange about the people taking Becca away. They didn't fully resemble the eyes we've seen before. Some fans swear the figures look smaller, slimmer, almost feminine. Others noticed shapes underneath the black coverings that looked more like dresses than uniforms. A few even pointed out baton-like objects that resembled what aunts carry. And suddenly, Reddit exploded with speculation. What if those weren't actually eyes? What if Aunt Lydia intervened? This theory argues that Lydia may have quietly redirected Becca into Ardua Hall instead of letting commanders publicly destroy her life. And honestly, this possibility feels much more believable than some kind of dramatic rescue mission. Lydia has increasingly shown concern for girls under her care, especially when powerful men abuse them. Becca didn't kill for selfish reasons. She acted while trying to protect victims. If anyone inside Gilead might quietly bend rules to save her from complete destruction, fans believe Aunt Lydia could be that person. Then there's the wildest theory of all: Mayday disguised as eyes. According to this idea, Resistance operatives staged the covert extraction and secretly pulled Becca out before Gilead could punish her, possibly with help from Garth. It sounds exciting. Hopeful even. But if we're being brutally realistic, this theory feels more like wishful thinking. Because if Becca suddenly disappeared, Commander Mackenzie, Judd, and multiple powerful figures would immediately start asking dangerous questions. That kind of operation risks exposing Mayday for one person, and The Testaments is not usually the kind of show that hands viewers easy victories. So right now, the evidence points to one uncomfortable conclusion. Becca is most likely still in Gilead custody, and depending on who truly took her, her punishment may already be waiting. But in Gilead, context does not matter. And that's what makes Becca's situation terrifying, because Gilead does not care why a woman breaks. It only cares that she stepped out of line. That's why the biggest question after episode 9 isn't actually who deserved what. It's this: what kind of punishment does Gilead think fits someone like Becca? And here's where fans are completely split. The first, and probably darkest possibility, is that Becca becomes a handmaid. Honestly, as awful as it sounds, this theory may currently be the strongest one. Why? because Gilead rarely wastes fertile women. That's the brutal reality of this world. Women of childbearing age are not treated like people, they're treated like resources. Becka committed murder, yes, but Gilead has repeatedly shown it prefers control over execution when fertility is involved. Instead of killing Becka publicly, the regime could easily strip away her identity, force her into red robes, and assign her to a commander. And if that happens, it completely changes how we understand Episode 9, because Becka would become the very thing she tried to protect girls from. Think about how devastating that is emotionally. Becka killed Dr. Grove partly because abuse had gone ignored for so long. She acted where the system failed. But instead of acknowledging the abuse, Gilead could punish her by forcing her deeper into the same machinery that destroyed so many women in the first place. And honestly, that feels brutally believable for this show. But there's another reason this theory feels so strong, and it has less to do with Becka herself. It's Agnes. Because what if Becka becoming a handmaid is the final thing that breaks Agnes's faith in Gilead? This is the emotional angle many viewers are missing. Becca's fate isn't just about Becka anymore. It's about what happens to Agnes after watching someone she loves get destroyed by a system that claims to protect women. For most of the season, Agnes has lived in a constant state of conflict. She obeys the rules, but she keeps seeing cracks in the system. She keeps seeing hypocrisy, abuse, silence, cruelty disguised as morality. But if Becka gets turned into a handmaid after defending abused girls, that may be the moment Agnes finally stops believing in the world that failed them both. And suddenly, Becca's punishment becomes the catalyst for rebellion. That possibility alone makes this theory terrifyingly powerful from a storytelling perspective. But here's where things get messy, because not everyone agrees the handmaid route makes sense. Another huge theory taking over is that Becka is heading towards a forced marriage instead. And weirdly enough, the show may already have hinted at it. Fans immediately remembered the older commander from the matchmaking ball, the one who got Becka drunk and made viewers deeply uncomfortable. Episode 9 strangely reminded audiences about him again, and fans don't think that was accidental. In TV writing, details usually come back for a reason. The theory goes like this. Gilead doesn't want scandal, and Dr. Grove's death is a massive scandal waiting to explode. So instead of publicly addressing what happened, the regime quietly buries it. And one terrifying way to bury scandal? Marry Becka off. Fast. Some fans think Gilead could force Becka into marriage to that older commander, effectively punishing her while restoring order. From Gilead's perspective, marriage solves everything. It removes public questions, reestablishes hierarchy, silences controversy. And worst of all, it punishes the victim instead of the institution, which feels painfully realistic for Gilead. But here's the problem with this theory, and honestly, it's a pretty big one. Would Gilead actually see this as punishment? Because technically, marrying Becka to a high-ranking commander could be viewed as an upgrade. Right now, Becka is matched with Garth, a younger guardian with lower status. A commander outranks him socially. In Gilead's twisted hierarchy, status matters more than morality. So while viewers would see this marriage as horrifying, the regime itself might not consider it punishment at all. That doesn't completely kill the theory, but it weakens it. And this is exactly why fans are arguing so hard online, because both outcomes somehow make sense. And there's another reason fans keep pushing this theory. Because the books. Readers immediately pointed out that Becka eventually becomes an aunt in the Testament's source material. But here's the catch. Book Becka never murdered her father, which changes everything. The show has already remixed major storylines, motivations, and timelines. So assuming the adaptation follows the exact same ending could be a huge mistake. Still, if the writers want to preserve Becca's larger role while adapting it to television drama, On Training may actually be the cleanest solution. Episode 9 won't just be remembered as shocking, it'll be remembered as the moment Becka lost everything and Agnes finally stopped believing in the world that failed them both.